Hello everyone, I'm Robert,
I'm Mandy.
and we're here today to share with you some of our insights and knowledge.
The theme of the talks that we're putting forward is from chaos to calm. And specifically, we are addressing the issues that many of us are facing having to work at home during the COVID-19 crisis and integrating some of the yogic strategies and insights to help you through these times. I'm going to talk to you very broadly and generally about yoga now. You might not realize it, but yoga is a tradition which actually dates back thousands of years into the Vedic period of Indian history. Quite remarkably, yoga is still as relevant today as it was to the early practitioners in ancient times. And this is because yoga is a system of self-care where every aspect of the self is positively enhanced and benefited through the key practice areas of yoga. Very broadly, yoga can be categorized into 5 distinct aspects or areas of practice. These are the movement practices, so intelligent, mindful movement of the body to enhance the well-being of the physical body and even the internal systems. This is the first component of the yoga system. The second aspect of yoga is the breathing. And there are some very specific ways of regulating and controlling the breathing which bring about different effects in the body, in the mind. And the main benefit of yogic breathing is the calmness that it can bring, the steadying and the focusing of the mind. And this leads us into the third component of yoga, which is the relaxation that comes through moving mindfully, breathing very deeply, and bringing our focus inwards. The fourth component of yoga is meditation. And this is really learning to regulate and control the mind. And we do this through certain practices that help us to shift our focus from everyday thinking to a very specific focus on a particular object, which brings about feeling of peace. The fifth component of yoga is mindfulness. And this is the awareness that we bring to whatever it is that we're doing in this moment. We become aware of our thoughts and where those thoughts might lead us, the emotions that might flow on from those thoughts, and the actions that we might be compelled to undertake through feeling certain emotions. And we all know where they might lead us. This is very broadly the system of yoga. So through that meditation, through that study of themselves, of human nature, the ancient yogis came to discern 5 very distinct aspects of the self, going from the physical, what we can easily relate to, the physical body and its internal systems, and the mind, which from a yogic point of view is comprised of not only the thoughts, not only the emotions that flow from certain thoughts, but those underlying beliefs as well, which unconsciously might drive us to think and feel certain things without us even realizing it. And beyond the mind, there is, of course, the energetic aspect to the self. We don't often think about this until we feel like we have no energy. We all have those days or moments where we say, I've got no energy. And beyond the energetic aspect to the self is what is called the wisdom body or the wisdom mind. And this is the higher functioning that isn't associated with that whole cycle of beliefs informing thoughts, informing our emotions, informing our actions. So beyond all of that is this innate intelligence and wisdom. And it is, of course, one of our aims in yoga to access this higher intelligence and wisdom at will. And there is an understanding that what is often in the way of that is this whole cycle of thinking, emotions, actions, reacting, thinking, emotions, reacting. So beyond all of that is this higher wisdom and intelligence. Beyond all of that, at our very center, is an inner peacefulness that is characterized by a feeling of calmness, lightness, there's clarity in the mind, a feeling of well-being in the body. So this system of yoga relates directly to these 5 aspects of self. And through the various practices, we're bringing well-being to the whole self. So from a yogic point of view, self-care is doing a little bit of all of these various practices to bring well-being to benefit the 5 aspects of the self. I'm going to talk to you a little now about stress. Stress is something that we're all too familiar with. The stress response is a normal physiological function designed to keep us safe in the world. The stress response, or the fight-flight response as it's also known, is a normal physiological function which keeps us safe in the world. There is a surge of stress hormone, a surge of energy, which enables us to act appropriately to keep us safe. This comes at a cost, of course, as energy is drawn away from other internal systems and processes of the body. The digestive system, the immune response, the cardiovascular system is all decreased, so our short-term energy is optimized, enabling us to respond accordingly. So the stress response is characterized by accelerated heart rate, overactivity of the mind, and survival becomes our key focus in that moment. The second stage of the stress cycle is when the stressors seem to be continuous and stress becomes chronic. So this becomes an unnatural response to situations that don't really warrant all of this energetic activity to keep us safe in the world. So of course the symptoms associated with chronic stress might be a little more ongoing and a little more insidious. So these are some of those things which might be our tendency to get sick with that decrease in our immune system functionality, perhaps joint muscle pain, tension in the body, neck aches, backaches, headaches, allergies, hyperactivity, and even exhaustion are all symptoms of chronic stress. And when we're chronically stressed, we lose the ability to see the big picture. Every day seems to be a fight for survival. Of course, none of us want to feel like this. And so this leads us into the third stage of the stress cycle, which is really addiction. And addiction is simply unhealthy coping mechanisms which relieve the pain of ongoing stress. And we all reach for those things in our lives that we deem to be the opposite of chronic stress. We might reach for medications, we might reach for our vices, which might be smoking or drinking, or reaching for junk food or watching television or so much social media. It kind of numbs these feelings of stress temporarily. It's not a permanent fix, of course, so that leads us to reach for more of it, and this is where it becomes an addiction. So we're simply doing what we think we need to do to relieve the distressing or uncomfortable symptoms of chronic stress. Of course, this is not sustainable. And if we continue down this trajectory, then this leads us towards the fourth stage of the stress cycle, which is chronic illness. And this is really the dysfunction of the body's systems due to the impacts of long-term stress. And perhaps even some of the damage we might be causing ourselves through some of those addictive behaviors. There's only so long we can have an unhealthy diet. There's only so much alcohol we can drink There's only so many cigarettes we can smoke before it becomes detrimental to our physical health. There are illnesses that have a stress component, including heart disease and stroke, cancer, respiratory conditions, digestive disorders, arthritis, Alzheimer's, and the list can go on. The mind and the emotions are essentially imbalanced, and there can be a tendency towards depression, anxiety, mental illness, pessimism, and even despair. The basic premise of yoga is that we're comprised of these 5 distinct aspects, being the body, the mind, the energetic, the innate intelligence or wisdom, and this center of inner peacefulness, calmness, and happiness. And when these 5 aspects of the self are in balance, then we experience well-being, peacefulness, focus. The system of yoga provides us with the tools to balance these 5 aspects of self. And this becomes particularly important in times when we've shifted from that internal state of balance, when we're experiencing stress in whatever stages of the stress cycle we might be within. So we restore balance and well-being through the practices of the 5 key areas of the yoga system. A little bit of the movement practices, some breathing, some relaxation, some meditation, and the mindfulness. The mindfulness being that awareness, that focus we bring to what is happening in the present moment. That awareness of where our mind is at in this moment. And if there are any disturbances to our peace of mind, that we're able to bring ourselves back to balance very quickly. We're able to activate what is called the relaxation response or the rest and digest response, which is the opposite response to the stress response. So this is what is appropriate and required in everyday life to maintain our health, to maintain our well-being, to maintain our peace of mind, to be able to activate relaxation, calmness, peacefulness at will. Yoga provides us with a clear methodology, a pathway out of this whole stress cycle and into a new cycle of being that we might like to call a peace cycle. You may be confronted with the same situation that previously caused you great stress or distress, perhaps a confrontation with a partner or your child, colleague, that previously you would have reacted to quite instinctively with anger or sadness or hurt or whatever it might be. So instead of that, in that very moment, you apply yogic mindfulness to notice that response rising up within you, and to, instead of doing what you usually do, to instead draw on the practices of yoga. So simply taking a deep breath in that moment, reassuring yourself that you're okay, stabilizing the breathing, reducing the physiological effects of the stress response, and then coming back to that person or situation with a new perspective, one of perhaps calmness. Once you've brought this steadiness to the mind, to the emotions, you come back with some steadiness, with some kindness, with some compassion, because after all, they experience what you're experiencing too. They also are caught somewhere in this whole cycle of stress. In order for yoga to work, we need to create a container or a structure within our daily life so we're able to successfully create the time and the space to integrate the 5 key areas of yoga into our daily life. So establishing a routine, a structure to our days is fundamentally important. Robert is going to talk to you a little bit now about the importance of structure.
I'd like to talk to you a little bit about structure and the importance of structure in our daily lives. Borrowing from physics, the second law of thermodynamics is that the entropy of any isolated system always increases. What does this mean for us? Well, entropy is the uncertainty or randomness. For example, when ice melts in a glass of water, the molecules of ice disperse in a random way. Or if you think about a sandcastle built on the beach and the wind blowing, the grains of sand disperse and the form of the castle eventually moves towards a state of chaos. The opposite of entropy is negentropy, where things become more ordered. In our lives, we're not suited to unlimited possibilities. We need some structure. We need some order in our lives. And in order to create order in our lives from this law of physics, entropy, work is required. So what work is necessary in order to create a functional structure in our lives? This is the challenge that we face. We don't have unlimited energy. We need to use our energy and apply it in a way that is going to achieve the results we want. Considering that we want to create a functional structure in our lives, we need to give consideration about how best to do this and what tools we can use in order to achieve this. Mandy's discussed with you some of the principles of yoga and how they might be applied to our everyday working lives. Our working lives integrated now with our home lives and our family lives may seem to have a certain degree of disorder. And of course, it's not easy to focus on what needs to be done when there are distractions from every corner. In developing a very clear focus and in developing a system for us to be able to achieve the goals we set ourselves, we need to be able to filter out those distractions that are not helping us to achieve the goals we've set. In order to be most effective in any environment, clear focus of mind is needed. The practices that we've shared with you and that we've made available to you through our instructive videos are some suggestions as to how you might utilize the ancient practices of yoga to help develop greater efficiency and focus in your life. Of course, yoga is not a religion. It's a system of tools that can be applied to our lives. Certainly, the 5 layers of existence are important to address, and we need to start with the body. The body needs to be comfortable. So find a good posture when you're working. Make sure that you're steady and firm. If it's important to you to be able to deliver results from limited time, then the most important thing is to become clear and centered before you start your work. Everything moves in cycles. We're not able to sustain unlimited activity. Before beginning activity, a period of stillness and rest can be very beneficial. For example, when the heart beats, before the muscle of the heart contracts, there's a brief moment of rest. Were it not for that moment of rest, then the heart would very soon tire and collapse. Similarly, with the breathing process, after every exhalation, if you observe very closely, there's a brief rest, just the briefest of rests, and then the inhalation follows. So before you sit down for your work, having created a structure in your day that has dealt with all of your responsibilities for your family, your body, some physical work, the breathing, the exercise, the things you need to do in order to feel good in yourself, once you've created that structure in your life and you've been able to eliminate the distractions, sit quietly in your workspace and give yourself a moment of absolute stillness. Draw your focus, draw your intention clearly, and from there, you'll find that your work naturally is productive. They say if you want something done, ask a busy person. A busy person is somebody who knows how to make good use of their time. Every thought, every action, every deliberate stroke of the pen or hit of the computer key leads you towards the fulfillment of your goal. The clarity of that goal and the way in which to establish that goal is what we'll be discussing in the next segment. In this next segment, I'd like to talk with you a little about efficiency and focus. If we were to exert ourselves without pause, we would very soon burn out. There are so many demands on our time from all directions, and particularly so now that we're combining our work life and our home life, that without this clear structure and focus, our productivity can be adversely affected. So we want to think about something that we call power bursts and how to most effectively prepare for them. The physical scientists have studied the most effective form of exercise, and it's quite clear that continuous hard exertion has limited benefit, but periods of strong exertion followed by periods of briefer exertion or lesser exertion have the most beneficial effect on our cardiovascular and other physiological systems. So, just as we were discussing before embarking on a project or parcel of work that requires great focus and energy and clarity, it's very important to have a moment of complete quiet and stillness. It's just like a sprinter leaving the blocks, about to do a 100-meter run. Before they go, with their feet on the block, you can feel their clear intention and focus. And it's that moment of pure stillness and concentration that enables them to give 110% of effort. So give yourself the time and space, the permission to screen out any distractions that may be impinging on your ability to deliver best results. That means if your child needs attention, do that first. Give them your full attention. And once you've done everything you need to do, sit down, find the moment of quiet, and then make the very best of your time. Before we start any project, forming a clear intention is most important. Intention is like setting a direction on a map. Imagine that you have a compass, a magnetic compass resting in your hand, and you want to find your way to a particular point on the compass. You need to allow the compass needle to settle. Just in the same way, you need to allow your intention to become clear and to settle. That brief period of inactivity, that period where you allow yourself to be absolutely clear about what it is you want to achieve, will allow you to attain the most efficient use of your time, to give of your best, to deliver the best possible service to your clients, your customers. You need first to be able to look after yourself. If your mind is scattered, if your energies are scattered, if you're unable to work in a way that doesn't deliver absolute clarity to the task at hand, you do your client and your customer a disservice. And so ultimately, yourself a disservice as well. Therefore, the most important thing in beginning any project is self-care. And this self-care is not something that is selfish, but something that enables you to do the work that you're required to do in a way that best serves the outcome you're seeking. It's just like traveling on an aeroplane. When the stewardess makes the announcement to say, oxygen masks may drop from the ceiling, if you're traveling with a child, put the oxygen mask on your own face first and then on the child. So too, in preparation for your work, give yourself the benefit of a moment or two of self-care. To use a spiritual analogy, in the Himalayas, the Tibetan Buddhists have a wonderful philosophy. They spend their lives immersed in meditation, and yet their vow, their intention, is not for their own selfish benefit alone. The vow of the Bodhisattva is that they will seek their own liberation in order to be of best possible service to humanity. We can learn something from this. In order to be the best possible deliverer of services that we can, we need to take care first of our own well-being. So if there's a message in all of this for you, it's Be kind to yourself and give yourself the space and the time and the resources to strengthen and to focus your own clarity of mind. And in this way, you become not only a valuable resource to your company and a contributor to the outcomes that your clients are seeking, but also your own self-fulfillment. May you find happiness and peace in these challenging times. Thank you. We hope that what we have to share will be useful to you and that you'll be able to draw on it to apply some of the initiatives and teachings to your own life. We trust that it will make a difference, a positive difference to you and your family.